Okay, let's jump into a deep dive today.
Sounds good.
We're looking at, well, one really dense and fascinating chapter, Leviticus 25.
It's packed, isn't it?
Yeah. So, picture this. A community is about to enter this new promised land.
Right, a fresh start.
And before they even set foot there, they get this incredibly detailed blueprint for, well, how everything should work.
Not just laws, but a whole social and economic framework.
Exactly. It covers their relationship with the land, with each other, their economy. And it's all based on this core idea.
That the land isn't ultimately theirs.
Right. The land, the people, they belong to a higher power. This chapter sets up these amazing cycles of time, rules for property for poverty.
And it's striking how it's presented right at the outset, integrating faith with really practical stuff, farming, buying, selling, debt.
Totally. And it kicks off with an idea that feels, well, pretty strange to us today.
Yeah.
The land itself needs to rest.
The Sabbath year for the land, it's fundamental.
So for 6 years, it's business as usual. Farming, planting.
Yep. Sow your fields, prune your vineyards, gather crops, standard stuff. But then comes the 7th year.
The Sabbath of rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord.
Exactly. A full stop for the land itself.
Okay, so what are the actual, restrictions? What can't you do?
It's specific. Do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards. That's the main thing.
And harvesting.
You're also told not to reap what grows by itself from fallen seeds, the volunteer crops. And don't harvest untended grapes like you normally would.
So the land just sits, intentionally fallow.
Pretty much.
But hang on, that raises the obvious question, which the text even brings up.
What will we eat?
Yeah, if you're not planting or harvesting for a whole year.
It's the big practical hurdle, and the text addresses it head on. The answer is this, incredible promise.
Tied to obedience, right?
Right. It's about provision. The promise is a blessing in the 6th year.
Enough for 3 years, it says.
Exactly. I will send you such a blessing in the 6th year that the land will yield enough for 3 years.
Wow. So you eat from that bumper crop in year 6.
Through year 7 while the land rests.
And even into year 8 while you're planting again, until the new harvest comes in.
That's the idea. It requires a huge amount of trust.
Definitely. But what about anything that does grow naturally in the 7th year? That volunteer grain or wild grapes?
That's the other key part. Whatever the land produces on its own during that Sabbath year, it's for everyone.
Everyone, like the owner, workers?
The owner, yes, but also servants, hired workers, any temporary residents living there, even livestock and wild animals. It becomes communal, freely available, no harvesting in the formal sense, but foraging is okay for sustenance.
That's amazing. The land provides for the whole community, almost like a commons, during its rest year.
It is remarkable, but this 7-year cycle, it's just the building block for something even bigger.
The year of Jubilee.
The Jubilee, you count 7 of those Sabbath cycles. 7 times 7 years.
49 years.
And then the next year, the 50th year, is the Jubilee.
The ultimate reset button.
That's a good way to put it. It's announced really dramatically, too.
It's a trumpet.
Yeah. Sound the trumpet throughout your land on the 10th day of the 7th month, on the Day of Atonement. A major signal.
And what happens during Jubilee? What are the core actions?
2 massive things. Consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants.
Liberty.
Yeah.
Like freedom.
Yes, freedom. And second, each of you is to return to your family property and to your own clan.
So people go back to their ancestral land.
Exactly. And the farming rules are like the Sabbath year, no sowing, no reaping the volunteer stuff, no harvesting untended vines. It's holy, you eat directly from the fields.
Okay, so Jubilee has the land rest, like the Sabbath year, but it adds this huge element of personal liberty and property return.
Yeah.
That's the big difference.
Yeah, that's the crucial distinction. It's designed to stop permanent loss of land, loss of freedom within the Israelite community.
Which connects directly to how they thought about land ownership. It wasn't like buying a house today, right?
Yeah.
Not permanent.
Not at all. The foundational rule is stated so clearly: the land must not be sold permanently because the land is mine and you are but aliens and my tenants.
God owns the land. People are just tenants. That changes everything.
Completely. So when you sell land in this system...
You're not actually selling the deed forever.
Nope. You're basically selling the use of the land, specifically the value of the harvests you can get from it, until the next Jubilee.
So the price depends on how many years are left until Jubilee.
Precisely. Increase the price if there are many years left, and decrease the price if the years left are few, because what he is selling you is the number of crops. It's like buying a lease based on potential yield tied to that 50-year clock.
That's so different from our idea of land value based on, I don't know, location or speculation.
Radically different. And there's a moral command tied to it, too.
About fairness.
Yes, you are not to take advantage of each other, but are to fear your God. It's about operating fairly within this unique system.
Okay, but what if someone sells their land rights because they're poor and then maybe their situation improves? Can they get it back before Jubilee?
Yes, absolutely. There are redemption mechanisms built in, like safety nets.
How does that work?
If an Israelite, a countryman, gets poor and has to sell his property rights, his nearest relative gets the first chance to redeem it.
Like a family buyback.
Kind of. The relative pays the current holder for the value of the remaining years until Jubilee, and the land rights revert to the family.
And if there's no relative who can do it?
If the original seller later gets back on their feet financially, they have the right to redeem it themselves.
Oh.
They calculate the value for the years the buyer has already had it, refund the remaining balance for the years left until Jubilee, and they get their property back.
But what if neither of those happens?
Yeah.
No redemption by family or self?
Then the person who bought the rights keeps using the land until the year of Jubilee.
And then?
Then, automatically, no money changes hands, it just goes back to the original family. The Jubilee itself triggers the return.
So land is really tied to family inheritance and that Jubilee cycle. But you mentioned houses might be different?
Right, it's not one size fits all. Houses depend on location.
Okay.
If you sell a house inside a walled city, you have 1 year, a full year to redeem it.
Just 1 year.
Yep. And if you don't redeem it within that year, the sale is permanent. That house does not go back in the Jubilee.
Wow, that's a major exception. Any idea why?
The text doesn't say explicitly, but maybe houses in cities were seen more as, like, commercial assets, less tied to the family's agricultural land inheritance.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about houses outside walled cities and villages?
Those are treated like the fields, like open country. They can be redeemed anytime, and they do return to the original owner in the Jubilee.
Interesting distinction. And then there were special rules for the Levites.
Yes, because they didn't get a big chunk of tribal land like the others. They got specific towns.
So their houses...
They always had the right to redeem their houses in those Levitical towns. And their houses did return in the Jubilee, even if the town was walled. It was their designated inheritance.
What about the land around their towns? Pasture land.
That was even stricter. It must not be sold at all. It was seen as their permanent possession perpetually.
Okay, so we got layers. Farmland, city houses, village houses, Levite houses, Levite pasture land. It's complex.
It is intricate, yeah. But the overall goal seems to be protecting that family connection to some kind of inherited property, especially the agricultural land, while allowing maybe more permanent deals for city property.
And this concern for the community extends beyond just property, right?
Yeah.
Into poverty and debt.
Definitely. There are clear rules about helping a fellow Israelite who becomes poor.
Like what?
You're supposed to help him as you would an alien or temporary resident so that he can continue to live among you, basically support them.
And crucially, about lending.
Right. A really strict command. Do not take interest of any kind from him, whether it's money or food lent when they're struggling. No profiting from a fellow community member's hardship.
Again, tied to fear your God. That's so different from modern lending.
It fundamentally changes the dynamic. It's support, not investment aiming for profit from the needy.
What if someone becomes so poor they have to sell their labor, basically sell themselves into service?
That's covered too. If an Israelite sells himself because of poverty, the command is explicit. Do not make him work as a slave.
Not a slave. So how should they be treated?
As a hired worker or a temporary resident. Someone working for wages, essentially.
And for how long?
Only into the year of Jubilee. When the Jubilee comes, that person and their children are released. They go back to their family, back to their ancestral property.
So even servitude due to debt wasn't permanent for an Israelite.
Correct. And the reason given is powerful.
Because the Israelites are my servants, whom I brought out of Egypt. They must not be sold as slaves.
Exactly. It connects their freedom from Egypt to how they must treat each other. And there's another command. Don't rule over them ruthlessly. Fear God.
But, and this is a difficult part, the text makes a clear distinction when it comes to non-Israelites.
It does. It's a very stark contrast within the same chapter. It says you can buy slaves, male and female, from surrounding nations or from the families of temporary residents living among you.
And those slaves.
They are described as property. They can be inherited, passed down, and kept as slaves for life.
That draws a very sharp line.
It absolutely does. The text even highlights it by saying, after the rules for non-Israelite slaves, but you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly.
Hmm.
The framework for insiders is completely different from outsiders in this regard.
There's also that specific case mentioned an Israelite selling himself to a rich foreigner living among them.
Yeah, that scenario is covered. If a poor Israelite sells himself to a wealthy non-Israelite resident,
Do they still have rights?
yes, the right of redemption remains. A relative, uncle, cousin, any close blood relative can buy him back. Or, if he prospers, he can redeem himself.
How's the price figured out then?
It's based on the going rate for a hired worker, calculated for the number of years left until the Jubilee. More years left, higher price. Fewer years, lower price. Same principle as the land.
And the treatment by the foreign owner.
Supposed to be like a hired worker year by year, and the owner is explicitly told not to rule ruthlessly over him.
And, just like the other case, even if he's not redeemed.
Comes the Jubilee, he and his children are freed, they go home.
And the same reason is given again.
Yes, repeated for emphasis. For the Israelites belong to me as servants. They are my servants, whom I brought out of Egypt. It reinforces that their ultimate allegiance and belonging is to God, not any human master.
Okay, wow. So let's try to pull this all together. We have the land resting every 7 years.
Right.
The massive Jubilee reset every 50 years.
Right.
With liberty and property return. Land sales based on harvests left, not
Yep.
permanent ownership.
Built-in redemption.
Different rules for city versus village houses, special rules for Levites.
No interest on loans to poor Israelites.
And preventing permanent servitude for fellow Israelites while allowing it for foreigners.
What's the big picture here, the so what of Leviticus 25?
Well, when you look at how all these pieces interlock, it seems like a system deliberately designed to push back against, the natural tendencies towards huge wealth gaps and permanent debt cycles.
Like built-in circuit breakers.
Exactly. The Sabbath year rests the land. The Jubilee resets ownership and freedom. Land isn't just a commodity. It's tied to family, inheritance, and ultimately God's ownership.
It's creating a society with regular resets and a strong sense of communal obligation.
I think so. It aimed to keep families connected to their ancestral land, provide safety nets for the poor, give people second chances, all flowing from their identity as this specific community under God. Think about the no-interest rule. That alone fundamentally changes how poverty is handled. It stops debt traps, at least among Israelites. Yeah, there are just so many striking details. The land literally getting a break, the trumpet announcing freedom for everyone, pricing land based on time left, the city-country distinction, and that really sharp contrast in rules about servitude.
They aren't just abstract ideas, right? They're concrete laws meant to shape society according to specific values. Caring for the land, family continuity, freedom, mutual support within the group, all under that umbrella of divine ownership.
This has been fascinating. Leviticus 25 lays out this ancient legal and social world that just views ownership, debt, community responsibility so differently than we often do today.
It really does. It's a vision for preventing permanent economic exile within the community, ensuring everyone gets a chance to reset.
So thinking about these ancient laws designed to redistribute wealth, prevent permanent debt, ensure periodic resets, what does that make you, listening now, think about our own modern economic systems, our ideas about ownership, or even the concept of a societal reset today?